Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and our fun topic for today is why we tend to procrastinate one project with another smaller project. So just as an example, perhaps you have sort of a daunting task on your plate, something that feels really big and overwhelming, like getting taxes done, or a bigger scale project that has a lot of steps and pieces. And rather than jumping into that task and getting started on it, we might default to doing something else that is also usually unpleasant, like we also might usually avoid, perhaps cleaning the kitchen or organizing the pantry or folding laundry or something along those lines. So what are some of the neuroscientific reasons behind it, the psychological context, and also, most importantly, how can we use it to our benefit? So this phenomenon can be referred to as productive procrastination. Now, I have always liked thinking about this as procrastinating on purpose and actually using it to our benefit. So there's the dopamine and reward systems, where avoiding a perceived unpleasant task gives us a little bit of a reward. And also there's a sense of relief from not doing that difficult, daunting task. And that can have a little bit of a small dopamine release in conjunction with it. That can actually reinforce some of our avoidance behavior. There's also an element here of cognitive dissonance, which means that there are two things happening within us, and they are in conflict with one another. So on the one hand, our brain doesn't like the discomfort of knowing that we're not doing the thing. So it feels uncomfortable. We have that kind of hanging over us. We know it needs to get done, but we're not ready to do it for various reasons. And so in order to help reduce some of that discomfort, we do something else that's also considered productive. So we're not necessarily talking about procrastinating by watching some Netflix or a movie or relaxing in some way. We're doing a different task that's equally unenjoyable, but perhaps feels smaller in some way or more manageable. And so we might engage in that other productive task to help reduce some of that discomfort between knowing we should be doing it or ultimately want to be doing it, and also feeling that mixture of resistance in there. Now, the prefrontal cortex, which has to do with executive function, might be trying to do things like conserve mental energy in order for us to have it available for that bigger, more daunting task. And so by directing us to a simpler, smaller, more manageable feeling task, it feels like we're conserving some of our energy. The knowing of needing to do that task within itself may also cause some feelings of stress and create a stress response. And so doing something else is almost like a little mini distraction from that feeling of stress, particularly if it's something that's both difficult and unpleasant in some way, whether that's emotionally or mentally. And so by doing this other activity, this other task, we get a little bit of activation in the parasympathetic nervous system to reduce some of that anxiety or stress. There's also a sense here of immediate versus delayed gratification. So our limbic system that processes emotions and rewards sometimes may prioritize an immediate sense of accomplishment from a smaller task. So we get a bit of immediate gratification if we do something quickly, like wipe down the counters, clean up the kitchen, some quick tidying, some quick reorganization, cleaning off the desk, some little thing that might actually give us a sense of accomplishment whilst we're in the background knowing we have that other bigger thing to get done. That we know will eventually get it done, but that gratification of completing that is further away because it's a larger task. There can also be decision fatigue, mental fatigue, and an effort from the parietal cortex to help manage the cognitive load overall. So if carrying the weight of that bigger, daunting task feels overwhelming, our brain may try to redirect our focus and our attention over to something that feels less overwhelming. So there are multiple regions of the brain that are involved, multiple different systems in play, multiple different types of psychology happening. And by engaging in that smaller task, we're getting a little bit of that dopamine reward, which gives us a little touch of pleasure and satisfaction getting something completed, which also, by the way, reinforces the behavior of doing this, which means that we'll be more likely to do it again the next time something like this comes along. And it can actually give us a little bit of a mood boost, which temporarily alleviates that stress. We get a little touch of a sense of control back, especially if there's a difference in comfort level with the task, the bigger daunting task versus the smaller task. So for example, if that bigger daunting task is something like doing your taxes and you don't feel fully comfortable, there's information you're just not sure about, there's a lot of little tiny pieces that need to go and be looked up, or you have a learning curve, there's something that you don't fully know or understand, that makes it feel even more daunting. Whereas cleaning the kitchen may be something you do frequently, it feels very easy, it's very comfortable, it's very familiar, and yet still gives you that sense of accomplishment of getting something done. So that can kind of put you back into a feeling of control and competence, whereas the other bigger task takes away those things. When the task is a physical task, like cleaning or organizing, we might get some additional neurological benefits, like a production of endorphins. We're physically moving around. There's a little bit of exercise involved, depending on what it is that you're doing. There's physical movement, which can be a natural mood boost, and can also help reduce some cortisol and stress through that physical movement. If it is a task like cleaning, where there is a repetitive, rhythmic nature to that task, it can have almost a meditative, calming effect. So that makes that small, quick, productive little task that we usually hate doing, all of those factors make it feel more appealing in this moment. And it also feels like we're actually accomplishing something that maybe we normally wouldn't. So perhaps our usual process would be to procrastinate cleaning the kitchen, or doing that smaller task, reorganizing the desk, clearing out the pantry. Whatever that looks like, it feels even better now to be getting that accomplished, because that isn't something that we normally feel good about ourselves. We're not getting it done. So our brain is kind of tricking itself into feeling more productive and more satisfied, even though we're not addressing that bigger, more daunting thing that we will eventually need to confront. But I actually think that these mechanisms can be used to work in your favor if you do it strategically. One thing that really works well for me, and certainly experiment, I don't think that there's any one right way for everybody. I think every person kind of has to figure out their own path that works for them. But just as a suggestion to consider playing with is, I like to have multiple bigger and smaller tasks that all need to get done within the week without a strict layout of what's happening Monday or Tuesday, unless of course there's some kind of a deadline or reason that it needs to happen on a particular time frame. There are bigger projects that are kind of always in the works, or there are things that always need to get done, like creating your content. Perhaps you have some editing to do, posting on social media, creating various different pieces of assets for your business. And so you kind of have those things always on the rotation, always in need of happening. And then in any given week, you may also have some other bigger projects happening, like developing a webinar or a new training, creating something new as a product or service. And anytime we create something new, there's multiple assets that need to be created: a sales page, sales copy, social media content, perhaps videos and text and images and graphics, email sequences, newsletters. So there's a variety of different projects that could be happening at any given time. And most of them take more than a few minutes. Most of them are bigger tasks that we kind of chunk down into smaller things that can be done week over week. So I like to have a set of things that I can kind of choose from. And so if I know I'm creating like a new webinar or a training or something, and I know I've got all of these different pieces that need to happen, I've got to make the slides, I have to write the training itself, maybe there's graphics or images that need to happen, email sequences that need to happen, a sign-up page that needs to be designed and created, sales copy to go out onto social media and various platforms to advertise the webinar, and all of the behind the scenes and various different types of assets. So I'll have those things, bigger and smaller, listed out, and then I'll just sort of look at them and see which one I gravitate towards on a given day or at a given time. A lot of times it does feel better to knock out some of the smaller things first. So if I'm kind of procrastinating on the bigger portion, creating the slides or something for the webinar, I might just knock out a quick sales page or one of the 3 emails in an email sequence, or just create a few graphics or something along those lines that doesn't take an enormous amount of time. And so basically you're procrastinating on one project with another. So having options available to you. And I think that having options listed out for yourself can really help in terms of not pulling yourself into something you didn't intend to work on. Like maybe the kitchen does need to be cleaned, but it wasn't going to happen today because this other stuff needs to get done. So just having choices that you can make about, I really don't feel like I'm quite ready to get into those taxes or into creating those slides. So I'm going to go ahead and do one of these other things that I know also needs to happen. Perhaps it's also unpleasant. And that way you can allow yourself some flexibility because everything is still getting done, everything is still happening, and you're not actually procrastinating then. It's probably better if you tell yourself that you are because that makes you feel better about it. But really, you're not procrastinating if all the things that are on your list are getting worked on sooner or later. And once you've gotten through everything in your list and the kitchen is spotless, maybe you'll feel ready to jump into those taxes or those slides or whatever the bigger project is. So I hope you found this to be helpful. And if you do feel like you just need a little productivity boost or a little bit of mindset support getting started on things, particularly for those of us neurodivergent folks, I do offer a couple of hypnosis recordings that are very specific to those areas. The one I would recommend for this topic is called Neurofocus and Productivity, and it is available in my $7 monthly US mindset membership, the Hypno-Pothecary, and all of the details and information to sign up for that are in the show notes for this podcast. And until we connect the next time, I wish you the most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.